live, and I'm Moshe coming to you from Israel in the Galilee where I live. And what is today? Tuesday, I think. Let's check. No, Wednesday. Wednesday, the 10th of September, and it's 7:18 in the morning. Here in the Holy Land, it's not that holy. It's 72 degrees now, which is nice. We're coming out of our harsh summer. October is usually quite mild. September can be pretty up there. We're not getting it that bad. And 90 degrees is the high. And it looks like we'll be in the low 90s for a good week. And then we start to change to the high 80s. And that's when it gets really nice. You know, you could sit outside in the shade at 86 degrees, 87, maybe put a fan on out there, and it's nice. But 90, 91, it's not so nice. 82, 83, nicer yet. 77, better yet, you know. Uh, so it's time, pretty soon it'll be time for the sweatshirts and the insulated pants and all that stuff. If I sit outside in the fresh air in the winter, I usually get insulated blue jeans because they keep you rather warm if you're not moving around. If you're just moving around outside, just regular blue jeans works. But if you wear the insulated pants, you don't need much of a coat. You can just go with a sweatshirt often and a hat. And anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. Okay. So we're going to talk today about what happened in Poland with the drones, and you're not going to see a war, okay? Not yet. Is what Putin did a war drum? Yeah, we'll cover that. It's a war drum. And then we're going to talk about what happened in Doha, Qatar, with Israel knocking off the Hamas leaders out of the country, the real leaders. And is that a war drum? Well, it's another push towards Zechariah 12, that's for sure. And we're going to cover the cycles of the Lord, which is sort of what I title it, really. But I'm going to go through this with you, and I think you'll find it really nice and interesting. And I'm going to go through some other spiritual stuff with you and try to share some of my experiences with you. And it's I hope you not only enjoy it, but benefit from it. One thing, just to give you a quick idea where we're going. See, we don't have a place to bring people because we're not together yet. Yet. I said yet. Did I say yet? I said yet. Because, could you imagine somebody starting to walk in the true gospel, and they're not going to really know spiritual warfare, and we could convey it to them, but it's not the same as hands-on, and we could take them far. We could teach them, binding and loosing and agreeing, and they could agree with us and things like that. And we could do a pretty substantial amount of covering without binding and loosing. And I think that's why the channel is growing again every day. And it's every day. Now, we're not picking up 50 people a day or anything like that. It's a small handful every day, but it's something, right? Now, remember, we're not going to get a flood of people like churchianity does, okay? They're going to get the big numbers. We're never going to get the big numbers. Not till the end of the age. Then we'll get huge numbers. All right. Rather than, explain it all to you, I'm going to just do it all with you in a little bit. I'm not going to focus deeply on current events, but we got to cover current events stuff because there really is news that's got to be covered. It's relevant, highly relevant. like, okay, what happened in Qatar and how will it affect the hostages? You see, that's very relevant. All right, I got sound and picture. Moderators are here, thank you. And I am going to put a quick post up in the chat. And when I say quick, I mean quick. But if I talk too much during this, I'll make typos and then it drags on, and we don't want that. So here I go. Not much left to do, actually. Alright, got my post up. Let me pin it. And done. Being a Bible believing site, Old and New Testament, I'm going to do some praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay. Got that done. And so where do we start? We'll start with Poland. So a bunch, I don't know how many. I don't think it was 20. It could have been 6, 8, 10 drones. Russia was running an attack on Ukraine at the time. And they were running about 100 drones into Ukraine to hurt Ukraine. And they had some of these drones cut across Poland to go into Ukraine. Did they attack Poland with any drone? No. Could they have been surveillance drones that Putin just mixed in? Yeah. I don't think so, though. What happened? NATO planes, and there was apparently at least one American F-35 there, which is not common, and Polish planes went up and shot the drones down, as many as they could. And that was the whole incident. They may have taken, we have never gotten this confirmed, it's a possibility, they might have put Trump in a bunker. Precautionary. They may have thought that this was it. So they're very scared if they, did this, but we don't know for sure. This was unprecedented. Russia had snuck across borders with surveillance and different drones over the months, but nothing like this. So what is Putin doing? He's trying to scare Poland. And what is he, I'm going to move this thing a little bit, and what is he trying to scare them about? Well, what he's trying to scare them about is bringing weapons in from various countries in Europe and America, bringing them into Ukraine through Poland. There's a railroad that he uses, there's like a highway or road network he uses. And they bring the weapons into Poland, into Ukraine through Poland. Okay? And these weapons are hurting Putin with his, they hit his oil refinery, they blow up his gasoline supplies, his trucks, his jeeps, his troops, his everything, and he's really trying to see if he can get it to stop. So Putin doesn't have the guts to go and take a bunch of drones and arm them and go into Poland and start blowing stuff up, because there would be a retaliation. That would be NATO Article 5, all for one and one for all. I doubt that would not be the case. I'm rather certain that would be the case. If he actually attacked. Did he actually attack last night? No, he didn't actually attack. Did he violate Polish airspace? Oh, yes. Did he do that expecting NATO and America to attack him? No. He knew they wouldn't attack him. And they won't. But it's a push making everything closer to explode. Okay? And that's what Putin is trying to send this message to Poland is, hey, guys, you keep doing this, look what I could do. Now, he was clever. He sent 100 drones into Ukraine, and, maybe one or two handfuls deviated through Poland to kind of take a shortcut or something, right? And the message to Poland is, hey, this could have been 100 drones, Shahed Iranian type drones, I think they were. These could have been 100 drones. Think of the devastation you'd get, Poland. But you see, it's not going that way. It won't go that way. They're not going to stop. If anything, it made it worse. They're not stopping. The forces against Russia, they're not going to stop. They're going to give Putin a rebuke, and then Trump is going to get harsher with Putin with his new sanctions, as if it's possible to even get a shot. I don't know what he's going to do. Put secondary sanctions on the world. See, Trump is painting himself into a corner that he's going to have to get out of, but he won't. And he's, secondary sanctions is he's telling the other countries, if you buy Russian oil, this is what we're going to do to you. Trump put a 1% excise tax on people sending money out of the United States, but if you're using a licensed bank, a savings and loan, a credit union, you're okay. If you're using a licensed or approved, accepted money changer, a money like, the one, MoneyGram, Western Union, or, a PayPal or somebody like that, they're not worried. But if you're using a check, a money order, or, probably digital currency. And it depends what country you're sending it to. I doubt he's applying it to Israel. He's probably applying it to the countries he wants to hit with heavy sanctions. So, I don't know. It's hard to keep up with what he's trying to accomplish. It's more of a harassment than anything else. All right, so are we going to see a war tonight or tomorrow over this drone thing? No. Will there ultimately be a war? It looks likely, but not. This is just another step forward. Another war drum. It's not. It's Putin trying to say, hey, you mess with me, I just want you to know how easy it is for me to mess with you. So the people in Poland say, yeah, what if this guy sends 100 drones in? Can you imagine how many people are going to get killed and destroyed and hurt? And it could be us. And the panic, and the stress on the economy and. So that's what he did. What did we do, Israel do in Qatar? We went over to Qatar, and they've been housing the whole time with this Gaza war the real Satan bot leaders of Hamas. These are Satan bots, wholehearted worshippers of the unclean spirits that will tell everybody they're Muslim, but they know the game. They don't believe it. They're not Muslim. And they were hanging out in Qatar. The story goes further that Trump threw them a curveball with some peace offering, which it was doubtful they would ever agree to it, and even more doubtful that well, let me rephrase here. Trump got mad. Let's go at this another way. Trump got mad at Hamas. Trump knows the guys in Gaza are not the real leaders of Hamas. They would be like 1-star and 2-star generals. The 3 and 4-star generals, I'm just using an analogy. I don't think they have generals with stars. I don't know, but they were hanging out in Qatar, which is a very luxurious country like the UAE or something, with the 5-star restaurants, 6-star restaurants, 6-star hotels, all the luxury goods. These guys are multimillionaires, so they run around spending money. And Trump threw him a curve and said, you look at this peace deal, because Israel's already agreed to it. So they look at it, and they're having a meeting with the leaders, and they're sitting there at the meeting. They're not sitting there talking about, well, let's agree with this. The Muslim world, the Arabs, don't work like that. Whatever you offer them, they're going to come back at you and fight tooth and nail to see if they could get more out of you, or they're afraid you'd be insulting their ancestors or whatever they think. I don't know if they think that. But so they go and they read it and they say, what's going on? What's Trump thinking? How can we push and get more? That's what was going on. So they were having real serious meetings and brainstorming this, right? Probably about a dozen of them, or some number around there, maybe 12 or less. So they were in the same building. So Israel jets flew in, and apparently Trump told Qatar this was going to happen before it happened. As far as I know, Qatar did not repossess the $400 million jet they gave Trump. Just kidding. But no, they didn't. He told them they apparently did not warn Hamas. If they did warn Hamas, Hamas would have beat feet and not been in the building, right? Okay. All they had to do was go to a shopping mall or something like that, and the Americans weren't going to blow up a shopping mall. Israel wasn't going to blow up a shopping mall in Qatar and kill 800 or 900 people. And that would never happen. Not now. So we shot missiles, 12 missiles from aircraft, multiple aircraft, likely F-35s, into this building. Now, we may have hit 2 or 3 different buildings. This is still... I know 12 missiles hit one building, okay? Now, guys, that's beaucoup missiles for a building. Now, it wasn't an 89-story building. It was probably something up to 20, 30 stories. But even if it was 89 stories, you hit that with a dozen missiles, the chances of a building coming down is substantial. These buildings don't take a whole lot to go bad, when you start firing missiles from aircraft, So there were some dead, okay? These were high-ranking Hamas schmucks. Some got killed. How many got killed? Guys, I'm waiting for the Israel account. The Israel government will not release names and figures until they're dead certain it's true. Okay? They're not going to lie to us. They don't do that type of thing. It's too easy to get caught in a lie, for one thing. But they don't lie to us about stuff like that. They wait. They meticulously, Mossad, military intelligence, they get the evidence. They satisfy themselves that they really know who got killed and who didn't get killed, who's in a hospital, who's this, blah, blah, blah. Innocent bystanders, family members, they'll put all of it together and they'll release it. Now, it may take until Friday. Today's Wednesday. We may get it today, we maybe not. Tomorrow would be highly likely, or Friday. I think by Friday we'll have it. Remember, Shabbat doesn't start until the end of the, 6:30 or 7 o'clock or something like that this time of year. So you got all day Friday that you can get it. So I think it'll probably get released tomorrow or Friday. I'd be somewhat surprised if it got released today. Now you also got to remember this: when you look at these things, always put into your formula that you could have let's call them critically wounded, seriously wounded, right? And they could be in the hospital and not make it. Understand? Now, usually if they make it for 2 days or 3 days, they're probably going to make it. You can't say that for sure, but it's a pretty good sign. Most of the ones that go to the hospital and don't make it are going to be the first day, normally, or even hours after. They just, too much blood loss, too many vital organs hit, the brain's dead, they got to keep them on artificial breathing, or who knows what. Okay, so we don't know how many got killed, but some got killed. There were some Arab newspapers, Muslim newspapers were releasing nobody got killed. Well, how the heck do you put 12 missiles into one building with a bunch of these characters and nobody got killed? That's a big stretch. I didn't go for that. All right, so what are the implications of this? Does this mean that they're going to definitely kill the hostages and dig their heels in for a bad fight? Well, let me give you a breakdown on this. Now, in terms of what's actually going to happen, I'm not sure, and I'll tell you why. But this is the lowdown. Trump gave them a warning now I think it was about 3 days ago. He said, I gave you the terms of a ceasefire, and Israel accepts those terms, and you should too. This is the last warning. I'm not giving you any more warnings, and that's it, right? And what happened? What happened is Trump struck. Trump is trying now, what I detect, and Trump is likely having a lot of trouble communicating with his dark side, unclean spirits. And he's trying to get what I like to playfully use the term street creds from the rappers. In other words, he wants to try to get his, what's the right word? Get people to respect and fear him. Fear him is operative here. Because he ran away from the Houthis and he didn't do much with Iran, so I think the Pentagon managed to convey to him gently, because he didn't fire any of them, that he has no freaking credibility with the Muslims and anybody else right now. So what they would do is tell him to start with some easy victims, low-hanging fruit. And who's low-hanging fruit? Well, Hamas in Qatar is low-hanging fruit, but he uses Israel to do that. And then, of course, the one he's actually working on is Venezuela. But with Venezuela, don't assume you know what's going to happen. This end times. Don't assume that. It looks like not a lot will happen, but don't assume it won't. You don't know. Russia and China could show up with 40 warships. Then what? You see, you don't know. I don't know. Wait and watch. Okay? I don't know how Trump can conquer Venezuela, overthrow Maduro, and put the other guy in that Maduro locked up in jail. Because he has 300 and, let's just round it at 350,000 soldiers. And he has some warships, and mostly patrol boats, but they can damage. They're go-fast boats. They could take out American warships. Now, if the American warships is hanging around 100 miles out at sea, American warships can hang around 100 miles out at sea. They're, very secure warships, and they're usually 250 to 350 feet, somewhere in there, which is a heck of a big boat, guys. That's not a little fishing boat. And they could take the waves. These are all metal boats, and you see those big waves come. The wave comes, this is the boat, and the wave, this is the wave, comes and pushes the boat up, and the boat falls back. Well, that doesn't happen with U.S. Navy destroyers and missile cruisers and aircraft carriers. What happens is the waves come, they start pushing the boat up, and then the weight of the boat comes pushes through the wave, and the boat comes down. So you got a rough ride for the boat, no doubt about it, okay? But all the crew is inside. The boat's not going to capsize. It's built too well. The pilots, the Navy guys driving the boat, let's say, are too well trained. They're not going to let the boat go down. Or, it's going to work out. Now, you're talking a go-fast boat, 60, 70, even a 90-foot boat going out in deep water in the ocean. Once you get out more than 10, 20 miles, you're out in the ocean, Once you get out there, they're not going to do so good. They're the kind of boat that if a big wave comes, like a 40-footer or 30 or something like that, and it starts picking the boat up, the boat could flip. And I wouldn't think the Venezuelan boat drivers are that well trained or sophisticated and so forth. So I don't see them taking those go-fast boats out 100 miles and attacking the American warships. I can't imagine they would want those boats out that far. Those boats are gas hogs. And if they're going to start playing, let's attack the Americans, then they're going to have to make a high-speed run back to Venezuela, which isn't going to do them much good because American missiles will chase them, and American aircraft will chase them, and even helicopters can chase them. Helicopters go, 150 miles an hour? Go-fast boat, maybe it goes half of that, Overtake them easy. Fire a few 2 3/4 inch missiles, 3 or 4 of those hit the boat, or one even hit the boat, Speaking of boats and getting hit, Greta and her flotilla, they have the lead vessel. One of the schmucks in the boat fired a flare into the boat and started a fire. So now we're getting a lot of feedback that no, a drone never did hit the boat. I don't know. The Tunisian army said it, or the Coast Guard said it didn't. I don't know. They might be lying because they want to save face, and then Israel just keeps their mouth shut. And I don't know, but a flare. So they could be smoking weed on the boat. I mean, but you know what kind of a jerk you got to be? Okay. When I used to collect knives many years ago when I was in the world, and I was practicing knife fighting with the martial arts, designing systems for knife fighting. I had a lot of knives. And the knife fight, now there's knife collectors that buy the knives, put them in a cabinet with glass doors and let people look at them. You know, the people that buy the knives and you actually, you're buying them as weapons that if they have to use them for self-defense, they will. We had a saying, don't touch your knives after 8 o'clock at night. Because then you get tired and you cut yourself. Now, I would say the same thing with guns. Okay? Don't play with your guns in the evening. I wouldn't wait. Now, I mean, if something happened, I had to go out of the house, I'd take the gun and put it in. I always used a pocket holster mostly. Put it in my pocket, or use a real holster, or put it in my coat pocket, or whatever, and go out. And, and I had a gun in the car normally, and, it's all legal in Florida with the permits. And I'd go out, with the gun, but I wouldn't be playing with the gun, If I was going to work on the gun and mess around with the gun, I prefer to do it, mid-morning or mid-afternoon or maybe late afternoon, and that was about it. I didn't like doing it in the nighttime, Now, my exception was a lot of times I'd go to the range, and it would be in the evening, and I would shoot, and then I would, I used to leave. I was friends with the range guy, and I used to leave cleaning equipment there. I used to buy the big bottle, like a quart of hoppies and rags and stuff, and I'd buy a big box of rags, and he'd use it. And, he liked it because he could use it too. And then I would just, clean the guns there, so I didn't like stinking the house up with hoppies. And he could care less what I did. He had a workshop there. He didn't care what I did with hoppies. He didn't care at all. So I'd clean the gun over there, and then take the rags and wipe it down, and then put the bolts back in and leave, But, that wasn't really playing with the gun. So playing with a flare on a boat at night? What? You gotta have a screw loose. You're holding the flare gun and you're playing around with it like and then it goes up. I mean, you could cause the death of everybody on the boat from fire. You don't do something like that. I got concerned once. I was on a Disney cruise ship many years ago in the 90s. And we were the cruise originated in the Orlando port, and we wound up in Nassau, I don't know, the next day or something like that. And at night in Nassau, when the sun went down, the boat was moored at a dock, okay? So if anything happened, you could calmly get off the boat if such a thing would happen. Now, this boat probably had about 2,500 passengers. It wasn't that big, and it certainly wasn't overcrowded. You get about 2,500 people in, plus maybe 1,500 crew or 12, something like that. And you'd have to get off the boat, and once you got on the pier, you were okay if the ship caught fire. But they did a big fireworks show. I mean, they did Disney fireworks. If you've ever been to Disney, and I don't suggest you go, it's demonic, but they have Class A fireworks. Their fireworks rate with anybody's fireworks, as far as I'm concerned. And they were launching all this aerial stuff up in the air over the water with the ship. Nassau let them do it. And I was a little concerned if something did go, but it didn't. And they seemed to know what they were doing. I don't think any place in America would have given them permission to do fireworks off a ship moored on the dock or anything. You know, I don't think that would have happened. I think what they would have had to do in America is probably wait till the boat is offshore about 10, 15 miles, and then have a secondary vessel that has the fireworks come out and stay a mile or 2 miles away from the cruise ship and throw the fireworks up in the air for everybody to see. Now, when you go to their big fireworks show every night in what do they call it, Expo or something, they have a big man-made lake, and they have a barge out on the lake that launches the fireworks, and you're on the shore and you watch it. And their fireworks are superb, you know. And when I was a kid, my father used to take me to the roof of the apartment building we lived in, and Macy's that's a big department store chain, used to, I think they still do, they sponsor the Thanksgiving Day parade, which is frequently freezing weather in New York. It's a pre-Christmas thing. And they would have all these big floats, they would, like a Snoopy dog that's 70 or 100 feet long, and junk like that. But they did fireworks in the nighttime, and I think they did them over the Hudson River. And Macy's did it, I believe. And my father took me up to the roof, and we watched the fireworks. I was a kid. I don't know what I was, 9, 8, 10. I didn't know you could do that. And I was shocked that he knew that, and apparently he was doing it when he was a kid. So it was really pretty cool watching it, that they had good fireworks. So anyway, so what happened in Qatar is probably some of these guys got dead. Some of these guys may be injured. And the idea behind this was this. Trump was mad at them. They're sitting around in Qatar, who's a friendly country with Trump, an enemy of Israel, a staunch enemy, but a friend of Trump. And they're hanging around in Qatar, and Qatar is letting them stay there since October 7th, 2023, letting them hang around out there, do what they want, right? Eat out, go shopping, go to the water, have a good time, take flights wherever they were going to go, And nobody, they were sort of in a hands-off location. This is Qatar. They're the mediators for Hamas and Israel. And, we don't want them getting killed. You don't do that in Qatar. Well, Trump started leaking information that Israel was going to kill the leaders wherever they were. Why? They were not giving in. They didn't want to return the hostages. They had no interest in leaving Gaza, no interest in a new government, no interest in the people leaving Gaza, no interest in Trump setting up a multi-billion-dollar resort where he would make billions of dollars with casino hotels like Las Vegas. He was going to make it into a Las Vegas on the Mediterranean, which has good beach weather probably 8 months a year, 7 to 8 months a year. They have a cold, rainy winter there, but the weather is still quite mild, far from freezing. So some people from really cold places, like the UK in the winter, Finland, Denmark, Russia, Canada, they would go down there. And, let's say in the winter the temperature is going to hit 58, Well, if you're coming from 10 degrees plus 10 Fahrenheit to 58, you could just about walk around in a t-shirt, I remember there was a kid in the neighborhood that was in the army in Alaska in the winter, and he came back to the Bronx on leave, And, he was up north in Alaska where you're getting sub-zero, -20, -40. And, the winter day, it's 50 degrees in the Bronx, and the guy would walk around like in a t-shirt. Why? It's like 70 degrees more than what he was getting in Alaska. So he was walking around. I don't think that was wise. He should have put a light jacket on. In Vietnam, the kids were running around during the war. American soldiers were running around in the jungles, and the temperatures were like 100, 103, 105 every day. They're like 100, right? And then the temperature would drop to 70, and they had guys catch pneumonia. 30-degree drop like that. And, I've been in countries where it was tropical, okay? And it would be at night probably 75, 77 degrees. And it would be about 198, 100 during the day, something like that. Pretty hot during the day, right? And I would go out at night in a t-shirt, just short pants and a t-shirt. And I would see people there with long pants, wearing some kind of a hat and wearing a shirt and a jacket. I see the policemen would have their, like a rain jacket that came down maybe with the pockets, below the pockets of their pants. They'd have it all zipped up with the collar up in the 70s, and I'd be walking around in a t-shirt. See, so this stuff happens, and so if I was to leave Israel in the middle of the summer, and I'd say take a plane to the UK, the temperatures would be probably 60s, 70s. I would, have to bundle up. People there would maybe be wearing a shirt and a light jacket. I'd be putting on minimally a sweatshirt or a real jacket or something, So the idea is these hardline leaders are not going to keep telling the people in Gaza, you can't give those hostages up, right? And you can't give up. You got to keep fighting, So the thought is that these people running the show in Gaza may throw the towel in and surrender. Look, if they call Trump up and they say, okay, we want a deal, Trump will say, I make deals. What do you need? Well, get us into some country where we could be safe. Let us get out with our money, and we'll leave all our weapons behind and give us some assurances we're not going to get targeted assassinations. Trump would say, what? Done. That's it. Then once this happens, whatever occurs in Gaza is none of their business. That's how that's going to be done. They're out. They got out with their lives and their money and their families, okay? And then when they're out, Trump is free to turn the heat up in Gaza to get them out of there without repercussions. It's very easy to do it. And then it's never going to come to pass this way, because we know the prophecies. I read them to you. But that's what they're doing. Okay. Let's see what else in the news there is to go. So don't get too upset over this business with Poland and the Russian drones. It's a war drum. It pushes people closer to war, but it's not a trigger. It's not going to cause a war. And what we did in Qatar, what is that going to do? It's going to push things closer to Zechariah 12. Okay? And it's not going to cause it by itself. Qatar did say we reserve the right to counterattack or something like that to Israel, but I doubt they ever would do that. They have a reasonable amount of aircraft. They got Rafale jets, Eurofighters, you know, like 30 of this, 30 of that. But they don't have any stealth jets. They probably have decent radar, but no stealth jets. And they don't have any serious destroyers or missile cruisers or submarines or anything like that. So if they wanted to pick a fight with Israel, Israel would start blowing up their landmark buildings, their 100-story buildings, and the ports, and it would be trillion. It would be ka-ching $1 trillion, ka-ching $1 trillion, ka-ching a trillion. You have a building that's 120 stories or whatever they're building in Qatar like that. You hit that with a few missiles. You're probably at $1 billion, or billions of dollars. I mean, good night. This watchmaker, Jacob and Co. Now, this guy's an S-bot, and I suspect this person is a transformer, and or you could say transactional transformer if you want to make the point. He's got himself in a lot of trouble with the watches in China. This character sells watches in the millions, okay? Millions of dollars. Are his watches any good? Well, they're very clever designed, and they do a lot of very special things. But when I was into watches many years ago, when I was in the world making money, a lot of these expensive watches, I spoke to dealers, were pieces of crap. They didn't run. I bought an Audemars Piaget once, a big, thick ocean, whatever they called it, Royal, I don't remember. It's a big, heavy watch, but it was made out of titanium. And it was a very attractive watch back when I was doing it. It was a $9,000 watch. It's probably $40,000 now. And I bought one, and the guy sent it to me used. I used to buy a lot of these watches used. If you buy automatic watches, self-winding, you can get them used. It's not that big a deal. So he sent me the watch, and it didn't have enough links in it, and I couldn't wear it. So I got all bent out of shape and upset with the guy, so he just told me to send it back. And I did, and then I don't know what happened. But I mean, he didn't chip me or anything. Everything worked out. And I don't know if it was him. Somebody else had one. And I bought the watch again from somebody. And I ran the watch to test it against the atomic clock to see how it kept time. And the thing was horrible. It would lose minutes every day. It was a piece of junk. So I got really upset with the guy, and then I sent it back, and then he found another one that actually kept good time, but not that good. And then I had the watch for a while, and then I sold it. There was a big demand for these things. Stallone had one. Schwarzenegger had one back then. It was around 2002, 2001, 2002, somewhere in that era. And they were getting popular as big hunky. It was a piece of junk, though. Audemars Piaget. Piece of junk. Couldn't keep time. The real sleepers in the watch industry for good watches is Breitling and Omega. They're pretty cheap compared to the others, and they keep excellent time. So if you want to buy a watch a luxury watch that keeps time, that's your secret. Do Rolexes keep time? They're very good at it. Patek Philippe would be the best, I think, at keeping time. So Jacob and Co. might be pieces of junk. They might not work. But he sells them. I mean, he's got a lot of watches for $250,000, $500,000, and even into the millions. He has a watch. It has like a roulette wheel in here with a little ball, and you push a button and it spins, and then it lands on a number. What would you want something like that for? I mean, you'd be a roulette addict and you play roulette with yourself. What value does this thing have? The only value I think it would have is if you were an owner of a casino in Las Vegas, you might want to buy it, or if you were a dealer or something, maybe it has, I don't know why people would buy something. It's something that somebody's got $800 million, and they want to collect watches nobody else has. So he probably makes 25 of them, you know. But he got nailed for doing a lot of his watches in China with exorbitant prices. So this guy's increasing the price by 20 or 30 times, you know. And he's got his own big private jet. He flies around on a good sized jet, you know, the kind that holds 12, 15 people, you know. Uh, and he's suing China, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe they're suing him. I don't know. How are you going to get money out of China? How are they going to do that? All they do is they collapse the company and start a new company. And when they collapse the company, they get all the money out of it. They call it paying bills, and then basically you go after a company that's dead. So he's just suing them to show everybody that, you know, he's going to make his claim that he's innocent. But I think his reputation got destroyed. So this character's building, I think it may be finished or close to finished. He's known for very expensive luxury watches, okay? And he's building, I think it's the UAE, I'm rather certain, a big luxury building with the name of the watch. So it'd be like Rolls-Royce going into the housing business, or Bugatti or so. I think Bugatti might be doing it. Or Ferrari building, you know, like a Trump Tower, or, you know, Ferrari could, you know, what if they start building a, you know, golf course resort, and they put, I don't know, a speed track on it or something. I don't know, you know. Ferrari has amusement parks. They got them in the UAE, Ferrari World, where you get on little roller coaster type cars that look like a Ferrari, and go around, you know. So I doubt Ferrari goes and builds roller coasters. Somebody probably went to Ferrari to want the name, and Ferrari said, "Yeah, cut me in for a piece of the action," and that's probably how it happened. So, yeah, that's the Jacob and Co. thing. So, anyway, the idea of killing them is that not that Hamas is going to be mad and go assassinate the hostages like some people in Israel are saying. The more likely proposition is that Hamas is going to want to live, and they get rid of these jerky leaders, and the Iranians may contact them directly and tell them what to do now. I don't know. But the thought is that they surrender and they get out of Dodge and they get away with their lives and their money, and they would give the hostages back. That's the thought. Could it work? Yeah, I'd say 50-50. Maybe a little less, maybe 30% yes, 70% no, or something. But they might do it. They might do it not because they're discombobulated and they can't function because they lost their leaders, but because they always wanted this type of an ending where they live, but they were told they can't have that. So Iran might tell them that if you do this, no matter where you go, we'll find you and kill you. So Iran could do that to them too, and then what do they do then? Nothing. They keep fighting. So if Iran tries to move like that, it might prompt an attack on Iran. I don't know on that. But there you have it. So right now it's going to take a couple of days more likely before we understand who we killed. And then we'll see if we did any good in terms of getting them to give the hostages back and fold. Basically what Hamas has to do is cave in. Okay? And I don't know if they will. I don't know. Okay, a couple of prayer requests. One for EB Echo Bravo. EB Echo Bravo. And the prayer request is pray that a land sale goes through. EB prayer request that a land sale goes through. Next, TC Tango Charlie. TC Tango Charlie. TC. Pray that this person passes a driving test. TC passes a driving test for buses. Okay, let's see if we have any other relevant news. So it's really too soon to tell who got killed in the attack in Qatar. We'll know soon. Frequently, the Arab media will say nobody got hurt, and then over the days they'll start releasing who really did get hurt and killed. Remember, Trump wants that land for his casino resort plot, so he must have bored down hard on Qatar to get them to agree to this. Maybe we should take up an offering and send a case of flare guns to Greta if we could get them delivered on her boat, and then maybe they'll blow themselves up, huh? Gold on the 9th, today is what, the 10th? On the 9th, gold hit 36.81 and silver hit 41.38. So the big thing is gold is maintaining now rather comfortably over 3,500 an ounce. So the way that pushes us to the next big resistance point would be 4,000. Okay, people, wolves in sheep clothing are still running around talking about, we're going to Bible now, 3 days and 3 nights of darkness. This happened in Egypt, but there's no prophetic depiction of something like this happening again. It's fiction. It's churchianity fiction. Don't believe it. Don't buy into it. There's nowhere in the scriptures where you see this happening again, and they got nothing to base it on. It's just stupid, and it's just church witches playing with you, just ignore it, okay? Some of you asked me about this a long time ago, and I see they're still banging it out there now, and it's just a joke, you know? Okay, it's a sick joke. What I want to talk about with you is cycles. This is kind of what I call them, okay? God puts us, the people on earth, through cycles, and things become different. Now, as I'll show you, there's really two kinds of cycles that I could pick up. And we'll start with Noah's flood. That was the end of a cycle. For some time, Noah lived, 900 years, you know. So for some hundreds of years, or maybe more, there was a wicked earth because the angels laid up with the women and they gave birth to things that came out like what they called giants. I'm guessing they were, someplace between 9 and 12 feet, something like that, tall, not 100 feet like the Khan in Hollywood, nothing like that. And they were running the people, Now they weren't just skinny tall like a 7-foot basketball player. These guys were, Schwarzenegger looking 12 feet tall, So somebody 6'2" might have a 55-inch chest with lifting weights, right? They could have had a 120-inch chest, which, would be like huge, And their arms, somebody that really lifts weights can have 20-inch arms. These guys could have had 35-inch arms. So what you're talking about is the arm over here is like this, So somebody like that, could probably bench press, 600-800 pounds. If you find a barbell, they could lay down on a bench and probably push it up that heavy, These guys could have been strong enough to run over to a horse and punch it and knock it out. Or punch it in the abdomen and really hurt it, break its ribs. You understand what kind of power they had? They could pick up a sword that wouldn't be 29 or 32 inches or something like that. It would be 6 feet. And it might weigh 40 pounds, 30 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds. And if they were swinging that at you and you put your little puny sword up, you wouldn't stop it. And it probably had a sharp edge. And they would have spears, where instead of having a spearhead that was 12 inches, it might have been 30 inches. So it was a spearhead this big and maybe this wide. And the shaft could be 5-6 inches thick, not an inch or inch and a half. And they throw it and something huge hits you, like the point of this big spear, could look like this. Huge thing like that comes in and it just rips you open, Or they could pick up a rock, 2-3 times as a softball, like a rock like this, and throw it at you. What happens if it hits you? They could have a sling that throws rocks like basketballs. See what I'm saying? They were tormenting the people. The people were crying out to God. They were treading them down. They were making them serve them, and it was just really a disgusting thing. And then God did away with the world there. So that was the cycle. He got rid of all these bad ones, okay? That was serving the demon, the fallen angels, and he got the angels out of there too. So the flood came and destroyed much of the earth because they had a very luxurious earth from what we could tell. They didn't even get rain. So if they didn't get rain, they didn't get snow. My opinion is they didn't have cold, frosty weather, and I don't think they had tremendous hot weather, and I don't think they had deserts or anything like that. That's my opinion. I think they had it lush. They had plenty of animals, and they had plenty of greenery, and they had an easy lifestyle. Okay, you didn't have to build a house to, protect you from the elements. You didn't have snow, you didn't have frost, you didn't have freezing, you didn't have hurricanes, you didn't have rain, you didn't have hail. Uh, you didn't have any of this stuff, so you didn't need much of a house. You needed something, I guess, to keep your stuff in and go to sleep. I believe they did sleep. I don't know for sure if they did or didn't, but I expect they probably did. And you could go in there and just have your own place. You didn't have to build like with bricks this thick or anything like that. You didn't have to insulate. You wanted privacy. It's that kind of thing. You could have had a tent, I guess. Just and they lived for hundreds of years. So they were seeing their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren, stuff like that, right? They were living a long time, okay? Enoch was in on that, but he left before it terminated him. We'll, of course, have a chance to share with him, one of the two witnesses, and I'm sure he'll be forthcoming about what went on. And so that cycle ended with Noah, 8 people in the ark that made it, okay? The death toll was huge. So when a cycle closes, now I'm making up this term cycle, and I'm going to take you through it. When it ends, there's a lot of death. Okay? Let's find some more examples of these cycles. Can we say Sodom and Gomorrah was a cycle? Not exactly. It wasn't Israel. It was a place that got really wicked, and there was outcry. So it was not really a cycle. It was just some evil, wicked country. I wouldn't call it a cycle. All right. What about when Israel went astray and they had Solomon's temple, right? And God told the Israelites that they had to leave because he was getting rid of this wicked Israel. So he told them, go to Babylon. You'll be taken well care of over there. Don't be afraid. Have children. You'll be okay. In other words, he was telling them they're going to be comfortable. They were not going there to be slaves. They were not going there to be living in poverty, eating out of garbage pails. They were able to make it over there. They surrendered to the Babylonians, and I imagine the Babylonians' practices back then were that if a nation surrendered to them, they were pretty lenient on them. And I imagine they did many times take people as slaves when they surrendered. But in this case, I don't believe they were slaves. I don't remember reading that they went there as slaves. And they had it okay over there. Probably like when Jews went to Europe or went to America or they went to Egypt, they had it okay. Okay? All right, so then not Egypt in the slavery. Egypt, say, 1880, 1910, those days, there was a lot of Jews living like in Cairo and Egypt, and they were doing okay. Until Satan lit the Muslims up to stop the Israel, they weren't that bad about it, Okay, so I don't think that was a cycle. That was a local. Sodom and Gomorrah was a local event. However, Egypt was, I would call that a cycle. Why? Because it pertained directly to Israel. Sodom and Gomorrah, no. It wasn't pertaining to Israel. Okay, so the Israelites were captive in Egypt as slaves for what, 400 years, 430, something like that. They were there for a long time, okay? And towards the end, it got worse, and then God wanted to bring them out, and he wanted to set them up in Israel. So what did he do? He sent them a deliverer, Moses, right? And Moses wanted his brother, because Moses had a speech defect, he wanted his brother, Aaron in Hebrew, so it's Moshe and Aaron. Moses is Moshe. They became prophets. So they were the two prophets, sort of the forerunners of the two witnesses in a way. Not forerunners, sort of like the two witnesses before them. And they were the judges of Israel. They would judge Israel. They ran Israel. But not exactly. When they were in the wilderness, and Moses never made it into the land, and I don't believe Aaron did, and I don't remember if did Aaron make it to the land? I don't remember. I don't think so. Maybe he did. I can't remember. But anyway, Joshua came in. So what happened to Egypt when this cycle was over for them doing all the evil to the Israelites and not heeding God with all the punishments he was putting on them? It finished up that there was a very vast destruction of Egypt, and during these plagues or the hits, the correct term for the word they call plagues would be a hit, like a hit, a hit. And they lost people in the hit, but the big thing they lost was when they tried to cross the Red Sea. So there was a lot of death in this changing of the cycles, because if there wasn't a lot of death with Egypt, then the Israelites would have gotten clipped. They would have keep coming after the Israelites, okay? If we didn't kill all the bad ones in Noah's flood, they would have come after Noah and took what he had or something, right? Okay. So we see a cycle there. And then we see them living in the promised land after Egypt, and Joshua, and they live there, and then another cycle sets in down the road, the Babylonian captivity. So those that go to Babylon are okay. The ones that stay in Israel a few years later, they all get killed. The Babylonians kill them, they wreck the temple and everything, and then Israel stays a mess. It's uninhabited, a mess, but the Babylonians let some of the poor people stay there to take care of the growth, the agriculture and the grounds and stuff like that. So they had a lot of death at the close of that cycle, okay, in Israel. There was a lot of death. The Babylonians wiped them out and took care of the temple. All right, then they had a 70-year period in Babylon, like the 270s in Daniel 9:24. It doesn't say 70 weeks. That's a mistranslation on purpose in all the English translations except one that was a self-published Bible by a woman, I think her name was Smith or something. It says Shavim, 70. Without a doubt, it's 270s. The word 70 never means a week. How can it mean a week? It's 70. It doesn't mean a week. All right. So it's not Sheva. It's Shavim. And it's in every Hebrew manuscript. All right. So you have the 270. So what happens? There was the end of that cycle. Many people in Israel died at the hands of the Babylonians. All right. Now, we have another cycle. with the Romans. Now remember, they had a temple when the Babylonians come, and they were doing the sacrifices and offerings. So to some extent, they were probably be getting the blessings of the Lord, depending how evil they were at the same time. Okay, but that stopped when the temple was burned and destroyed. Okay. So then, in the days of the Romish temple, Herod's temple, they were living there, and they had Yeshua. And then Yeshua, was sort of a visitation, and he let it go till about 70 AD, and then the Romans burned it down and massacred them. So you had a lot of death. They even went into captivity, similar to the Babylonian captivity, but that was a kind of a soft captivity, kind of voluntary captivity. But the Romans took them as slave prisoners, and they had a hard, very bad life, and they probably died early. But anyway, the end of that cycle was over. What was that cycle? They had a temple. It was apostate to some extent because it had two Roman eagles on the entrance to it. It also had Solomon's portico left over, where Solomon was judging people. So that didn't get destroyed by the Babylonians. It wasn't actually part of the literal temple. It was right near it, though. And they had that temple. They had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were doing the offerings, and they were, they were like today, rabbis, bad rabbis. And they weren't observing the weightier things of the law, like how they treated each other, just going through the Sabbath and the sacrifices and the offerings. So at the end of that age, they got killed, but God warned the believers, get out. When you see the army coming to surround the place, get out of town. You'll be all right. It's not going to be a wipeout all over the place. It's going to focus on Jerusalem. So they got out of town, and nothing happened to them. They escaped. The Babylonians that went to Babylon, nothing happened to, and they escaped to Babylon. Some actually made it back after the 70 years to Israel. They lived long enough to do it, So there was an end of a cycle. Israel had a temple. They were exposed to the teachings of Yeshua. They were still apostate to a great extent, and the temple came down again, and there was a cycle with a lot of death. And then they went into captivity, which is still the case in part today. Okay? And during this captivity time, Satan's the god of the earth, and the nations are following him, and they had all kinds of madness going on, and persecution of Jews all over the world. They were getting persecuted wherever they went. If the American Indians, North American Indians, are the lost tribes, which I personally believe they are, they got persecuted plenty by the Europeans that came to North America, hunting them down. The Indian Wars, the Trail of Tears, and all this other sick stuff they did. So they probably were, based just on that, probably were North American Indians were probably lost tribes because of what they got put through. Okay? So then what? Well, we're at the point now where a lot of people are about to get killed because we're coming to the end of the age. And the next age, it says, has eternal, everlasting life, not eternity, everlasting, which means you live on into an indeterminate time in the future. The word is called olam. It doesn't mean there's no death. In New Jerusalem, there's no death. But I'll get to that cycle. Not there yet. So in this cycle, Jeremiah 30:11 and Jeremiah 46:28 happens. God destroys all the nations that he dispersed the Israelites into. Well, when did this dispersion of the Israelites begin into all the nations, not just Egypt or one particular place? Well, it began at 70 AD. That's when they got dispersed around the world. So he's paying them back for that cycle. That's the year of recompenses, which isn't really a year, it's a period of time, and they they kind of tricked me into calling it a year, and that was an error. It's Shana, it's not Shana, and Shanim is the plural. It's not exactly a year, it's a period of time. Maybe sort of like a year or something, but it's more or less a period of time. And the year of recompenses is, of course, ongoing. On October 10th, I believe, 2023, the Lord told me we were in recompense. He didn't say year of recompense. I assumed that he said we're in recompenses. And I believe that's when it began, or maybe it began earlier, I don't know. He didn't give me specificity beyond that. And then I made the mistake of thinking it was a year because I didn't understand the Shanat word. Nobody really does. Now, some of the rabbis may, but they're certainly not spreading this information around. I had to really learn my lesson with this word and how they trick you. And they don't trick you in the Hebrew Bible because they use the word Shanat, but they don't tell you what it means either. So I dug deep into it, and that's what it is. But anyway, we're in recompenses, which is payback to the nations for what? For what they did to Israel. You notice how Israel does pretty good with the wars, with Hezbollah, with Gaza, with Syria, with Iraq, with Iran, with Yemen. They do pretty good, right? Okay. And but we don't get a real victory because we're not in redemption yet. So we don't get a real victory. In other words, Hezbollah is still there, Hamas is still there, yet the Houthis in Yemen are there, the Iranians are there, and so forth. Okay? So it's kind of a funny thing, but that's the way it is. All right. So this is closing out a number of things. One is the captivity, because we get the next great Exodus, like you could read that in Ezekiel chapter 20, beginning in verse 33, for instance, or Jeremiah 16, 17, and 23 also. So it says they won't talk about Moses' deliverance anymore because this next one is so great. So it could be the two witnesses get involved with this. It could be the glory of God of Israel gets involved, although I don't think so. But I leave it open. It's a possibility, but I doubt it. Or, maybe the Holy Spirit just leads them and there's nobody there doing the meeting. I don't know. All right, moving along. So the captivity comes to an end. There's way more Jews not living in Israel than in Israel. Also, a sign we're going to see is the next temple. You pick that up in Malachi 3. You pick it up in Ezekiel 37, the last three verses. And we're also going to have the tabernacle. That's in Ezekiel 37, the last three verses. We'll have the tabernacle too. And that's different, and we haven't had. Now that's probably for the people that are going to go on the next big exodus, and they're going to stop in the wilderness, because that's how it works, and they pass under the rod and enter into the bond of the covenant. So if you're entering into the bond of the covenant, it would make a lot of sense to me that you'd have a tabernacle there, and you would uh, be doing sacrifices and offerings. And, you know, that makes sense to me. That's why I think we have the tabernacle. It's portable. The temple's not portable, okay? The temple's on a mountain. It's called Mount Zion or Mount Sion. Now, there's a Mount Sinai. We think that's in Egypt, although, anyway, if it is in Egypt, which it may not be, the Egyptians plan on putting some sort of resort up on there or something, but, I don't think there's prophetic time for that, and it's not any, it's not a key piece of real estate that we're going to need, but we're going to have Mount Sion, Mount Zion, Sion, or Sion. It sounds like Mount Zion, or Mount, I'm sorry, but the Egypt thing is Mount Sinai, excuse me, Mount Sinai. And Mount Sion is where the temple will be. So the temple, I'm sure God's going to make the mountain come up, because it would take us, years to build the mountain. So he'll do it. And scriptures indicate he will. So anyway, this next temple is not New Jerusalem, and it comes down from heaven. All right? Now, the Orthodox Jews, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, are aware of that, and that's why the temple's never been built. But they never teach you that, do they? No. All right, so there's going to be a lot of death at the end of this cycle, as evidenced by Jeremiah 46:28 and Jeremiah 30 verse 11, and also Zechariah 13 verses 8 and 9, with 2/3 of Israel get cut off like dead. So the bad Israelis are going to get killed, and the nations that are against us are going to get killed and destroyed. Not everybody's going to get killed, of course. And, this is pretty interesting. It also talks about kings coming and bringing Israelites back to Israel as an offering unto the Lord. Now, I'm telling you right now, the kings of the world, like in, I don't know, Norway got them, Denmark, UK, other countries got these kings. And, an emir is really a king, or, whatever titles they give themselves, they're kings, King of Jordan and stuff. They're going to be bringing Israelites into Israel. Some of these kings around the world are. So are these kings Satan bots? Yes. They're always going to be Satan bots in these days. So does that mean that these Satan bots revolt against Satan and drop Satan and serve Jehovah, and they're finished with Satan? Yeah. So you have another age, you have an end of an age, and instead of having a temple destroyed, we're going to have a temple. We don't have the temple yet, because the next age is going to be a very great age. And I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about the next age. You could call it a cycle, but God calls it an age. So I call it an age. I made the term cycle up just to teach, right, so we're about to go into another cycle. And this cycle, we're going to have the temple, and we're going to have everlasting life. This is a 70-year cycle. A small one, like the Babylonian captivity, but not a bad one like that. Okay? And there's going to be a tremendous amount of death in the world when we enter into this cycle. Because they've been serving, all the nations have been serving Satan. And they're evil and they're wicked. And they've taught the people to be evil and wicked. Okay? The elect, those that are with Yeshua, will, of course, are in Israel and they'll be delivered. Very, very much like the ones that voluntarily went to Babylon got delivered. When Cyrus came to wipe out Babylon, the way he did it, he tried attacking them outside the city walls, and they were laughing at him. It was a joke. So what he did is he had his soldiers dig 28 tributaries to the river that was running into Babylon under the wall. And the tributaries took the water away from going into Babylon during the night. He had a lot of soldiers, and they did a lot of so they diverted the water away from going into the city of Babylon, so the riverbed became dry. Probably muddy, but you could walk in it. And the Babylonians didn't build a big wall in the river because then the water wouldn't get in. So they walked into Babylon under the wall where the riverbed was. So the Babylonians kept a good supply of food to keep everybody, I guess grains and corn and different things like that to keep everybody. And they probably had livestock animals inside the walls too. They probably took them in at night to keep them from predators and thieves. And they were able to sustain probably for a few years a siege. So if anybody came and wanted to, lay siege to Babylon with the big thick walls they could ride, they would drive chariots on the walls of their walls were that thick and high. So they were very secured, but they never thought this one through, that you could divert the river and then an army could just walk in. So during the night, so he diverted the river, the army, they didn't know what was going on. They diverted the river, then they walked in at night. The lookouts they had were not very many because they weren't very worried about it. If the enemy of Cyrus was going to get into their city, they figured he would come approach the walls with siege works and thousands of soldiers, and everybody would hear it. So Cyrus got his army inside Babylon without killing anybody. Or maybe he had to kill a few soldiers they banged into accidentally or something. And the people woke up in Babylon the next morning. And they went about their business, and then they realized they were occupied. And that was it. You see, if there was a big battle, then the Jews probably would have got killed. Because why? they would have been taking big rocks and catapulting them in, and they couldn't control where they hit. Rocks that were 3-4 feet wide, and smaller rocks, and then they would take big pieces of dried vegetation and make it into a ball and coat it with tar and to keep it together, and then light it on fire and launch it with a catapult. And then they would shoot arrows by the tens of thousands into the city. And some of these arrows would be fire arrows, right? And this would keep going on maybe for months and months and months. So people inside would periodically be getting killed, They got to walk around outside the city. They got to do things, and they walk around, and all of a sudden a volley of 300 or 400 arrows comes down, and some of them are going to get killed. They're not going to know the arrows are coming until they hear the whoosh, and it's too late. So that was a good deliverance. See, they didn't get killed. They were faithful. They trusted God. God said, you'll be okay. Have children. You're not going to be that bad off over there. You'll be all right. They believed him. They went. They turned themselves in. It took a lot of faith, right? He took care of them. Okay? And some of them finished their life in Babylon, and some of them actually came back to Israel. And some of their children, I'm sure, came back to Israel. Some of their children could have been 50 years old, All right. And Cyrus helped them come back to Israel. So they got so bad with the Romans that they killed Yeshua, using the Romans as the executioner. So they suffered for that. But the true believers, they were fine, just like they were in the Babylonian captivity. So why am I telling you? And who were the true believers in the Noah flood? Well, Noah. And what's the scripture? You and your whole house shall be saved. So Noah's house got saved too. So I'm giving you the pattern. The true believers get delivered. And that's the point I'm trying to hammer in. So you don't worry. And then when you know that, then you'll be more like me, where I wish the fighting and everything came already, so we can get our everlasting life. All right. So you see how the pattern is that his people that have the faith in him believe that he's capable to do this, that he will do it, and trust in him, and actually stick their neck out, trusting in him, get delivered. You see it? Let's talk about it in the future. So we're going to have this cycle, and it's going to go 70 years. Okay? And towards the end of the 70 years, I can't tell you exactly when, maybe 7 years before it's over, or maybe less, could be more, there's going to be what's called the Great Falling Away. And to read about the Great Falling Away, you need to read Ezekiel chapters 8 to 11. And you see people putting pictures of their idols on the temple, inside the temple, and being by the courtyard, by the altar, and bowing to the sun, turning their back on the temple and worshiping the sun, and sick stuff like that, right? Okay. So, God has to do something. So a famine hits Israel, and they don't have food to sacrifice anymore. These people get apostate, but then what does Jehovah do in Ezekiel chapter 9? He sends several angels. I think 6 angels have a sword to cause the punishment on the bad ones. And the other angel has a writing instrument with ink. And he puts a mark on the forehead of all those people that are in Jerusalem that are grieving about all the injustices of the temple. In other words, they're not cooperating with the apostates, and they're really upset and mad about this because they know a judgment would come, and they're really upset and mad about it. Okay? Now, the mark on the forehead, you read about that in Revelation. Mark is another name for the name. So, if you were in, 1800s and you were doing a real estate deal and you wrote a contract up, they would say, okay, put your mark here. And that doesn't mean you make an action. It means you put your name there. Okay? It could mean that if you can't write, maybe, or something, but your mark was your name also. You were going to enlist in an army to fight the British in the 1700s. Put your mark here when you enlist. You sign your enlistment paper, Okay. So it's probably God putting his name on you. But leaving that for a moment, nothing bad happens to those with the mark. So when you read about this attack in Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38:39, you also read it in Zechariah 14, and it's called the Great Day of the Lord. Now, when the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood, that's the appearing of Yeshua in the clouds, seated on the right hand of power. The power would be Jehovah, because Psalm 110:1 says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. And when the time this happens, Yeshua's enemies are not yet his footstool. So he's still at the right hand of God the Father. Okay? Elijah and Enoch are here. Apostle John is here. The glory of God perhaps is here or not yet here. Okay. And I think not yet. I think he comes right after Yeshua appears. But the temple would be here before that. Because it says in Malachi 3, he shall come suddenly to his temple. So the temple precedes him. Okay? The glory of God of Israel. Because it doesn't say he will come and the temple will come down. Also, when you read Ezekiel chapter 43, there's a pretty detailed depiction of the glory of God coming. He comes from the east, enters into the temple, through the eastern gate and goes into the temple. And then he says he stays there. He does stay in Jerusalem, but he does leave the temple. So with the apostasy, when you read Ezekiel, well, in Zechariah 14, we see the women get raped, the houses get looted and pillaged, and half of Jerusalem goes into captivity. That means slavery. Now, when you read time, times, and half a time, it's captivity. I know the church teaches other junk, okay? The first captivity, you have a second and you have a third. So what are your captivities? You got Egypt, you got the Babylon, you got Rome. Those are your three captivities. And your half is this, found in Zechariah 14 at the beginning of the verse, the first 3 or 4 verses. Half of Jerusalem goes into captivity. And the remnant of them, the ones that don't go into captivity, stay there. Why do they stay there? Because they put the mark, the name, I believe it's the name Jehovah, in the forehead, and there's no reason for them to leave. Nothing bad happens to them. So they stay there. Others run away when he opens, the Glory of God of Israel opens up the Mount of Olives, and they run through there. Or is it Mount Sinai? I believe it's the Mount of Olives that he opens. And they run through there. The temple never gets destroyed. The temple gets defiled. But in Daniel 8, I think around verse 23, the temple gets reconsecrated again. In other words, we cleanse it. We probably go through the 8 days with the altar, getting it cleansed and all of that. All right. It doesn't get destroyed this time. See, it's not that kind of a punishment, so to speak. It's a different type of thing. Okay. And the people have everlasting life, a lot of them. So we get closer and closer. Now, everlasting life is not that you can't die, because we read scriptures that tell us that you can, because it says a child shall die at 100. Well, there you go. That's what this is, everlasting life, And it says, my people's days shall be like that of a tree. Well, trees live thousands of years, but they die. The great sequoia trees in California, by the way, are suffering from the fire. They're getting burned up. Those trees are so big, some of them, they cut, I guess, before they really understood ecology and they didn't know what they were doing to the poor tree. They cut like a bridge, like a tunnel, a hole through the tree, and people would drive their cars through the trees. I never did that, but I saw some of these giant trees. They're pretty darn big. They live a few thousand years. All right, but back to what we're covering here. So we do see the glory of God of Israel leave the temple, and he goes to the Mount of Olives. And people in the church teach that that's Yeshua on the Mount of Olives. It's hogwash. It's not Yeshua. It's lies. It's the glory of God of Israel. Okay? And he waits probably until half of them go into captivity. And then right after the last one for that half goes to captivity, boom, he goes to work. And the enemies get burned up. They get dissolved. Their eyes melt in their sockets, stuff like that, right? Now others, their dead bodies are laying there, and the birds and the beasts come and eat them. All kinds of stuff goes on, right? It's a sacrifice as an offering to the animals. And So there's another great amount of death at the close of that cycle. Okay? So the next cycle will be 70 years, and it ends with a lot of death. And then what happens? At the end of Gog and Magog, Yeshua returns with many angels, and the beast and false prophet go into the lake of fire. And New Jerusalem comes, and then we go into New Jerusalem, right? But just the believers. So I'm not so sure there really is any more preaching the gospel and salvation going on during the New Jerusalem era. So after the 1,000 years are finished, which is our Shabbat, our rest, then now we're still in New Jerusalem. Now it says in New Jerusalem there's no death. Now this doesn't mean that you have the same spiritual body that Yeshua had when he went up on the cloud, all right? Or the same body that the two witnesses have when they rise from the dead and go up on the cloud. But it could mean you have the same body, but you just don't die. Okay? The Holy Spirit is the one that, when Yeshua appears, that's going to convert our body to the everlasting life, where you're going to live for a long, long period of time, but you're still liable to get killed. You know, someone could shoot you with an arrow or cut your head off. A child shall die at 100, you know, stuff like this, right? So you can die, okay? You're not impervious to death. But when you get in New Jerusalem, you eat the tree of life and you drink the water of life, and there's no death. So there's probably some sort of phenomenal healing that stops you from dying. And it says the leaves of this tree, or these trees, are for the healing of the heathen. So I doubt the heathen are inside and they don't get to drink this water or the fruit, but they get the leaves, and that probably has a pretty dynamic, powerful healing effect on them. They might have long life then, like before the flood. I don't know. Probably, maybe, I don't know. Are we going to be reproducing and making children in New Jerusalem? You got me, I don't know. You got me. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that it might be the end of that, but I don't know. My take would be probably not, okay? But you don't have that same kind of body. So you're in another cycle here, where you're not going to have death. So in other words, you're going to be in New Jerusalem. You're going to be with the glory of God of Israel and Yeshua. Father God Jehovah's up in heaven. Okay? Elijah and Enoch will be up in heaven, and I imagine Apostle John will be up in heaven as well. He'll go up after the two witnesses do. Because it says, you shall not taste of death until you see the kingdom of God, which I believe would be New Jerusalem or Yeshua on earth. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but maybe I'm not. All right, so Elijah and Enoch will go up before New Jerusalem comes down, because it says they have to restore all things before Yeshua comes. And we can certainly look at it that one of the restoring all things is that they go back to heaven to be with their Father, where they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be dwelling on earth. And the same, I would say, for Apostle John, would be the same thing. So he could likely return right at Yeshua coming down or something like that. I don't know. Go back up to heaven. I don't know. We don't read of him getting killed. He could just be converted up. I think we think. Okay, so now we're in New Jerusalem. And that's another cycle, a nice long, great cycle. Then after Satan gets released, he gathers them like the sand of the sea to attack Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. We're in Jerusalem. We're not going to get worried about it. How are they going to hurt us? With the work of God and Yeshua in there, they can't, but they get ready to try anyway. Maybe they're going to storm the walls. I don't know. And then Father God Jehovah comes down from heaven and burns up everything. And that's why, not us, but them. And it's closing the age out again, or the cycle, whatever you want to call it. It's really kind of both, I guess. It's closing it out, and there'll be tremendously large amount of death. And we're, of course, preserved. We don't get burned up, but the whole universe does. So there's no place for us to stand, so we meet them in the air. There's probably no more oxygen as we know it down here, no more atmosphere. So, of course, in the blink of an eye, we get this new body. Okay? And that would be like Yeshua's body. And of course, the dead rise, the bodies come up and they get a new body also. And then we all go up to, possibly while they're in heaven now, with Jehovah the deceased, they have some sort of a spiritual existence, but when this happens after the millennium is over, they get their bodies restructured and they get their body back, and it's some kind of an eternal body, but I don't quite get it. I don't know everything. That they have flesh and bone? I don't know. When Yeshua rose from the dead, he told Thomas, "Look, I've got flesh. I'm not a spirit." And he ate fish. I don't think spirits eat fish, and I don't think God is exact. You see, Yeshua would be like his father. God would probably reproduce after his own kind, like he tells the creation to do. I'm guessing, but I think so. I don't have the scripture for that. So he would be the same way. So they're probably not all spirit and they're not flesh. They're something that we don't really know a lot about, where they're like an in-between, and I can't say in-between, but it's something else. Okay? Do I think they have blood and flesh? No, I don't think they got bones and blood and flesh. I don't think so. It's something different. I don't know. We'll find out, but it's something different. All right? So then everybody that's the believers, the family of God, are going up on clouds to heaven, and there's nothing left here. And then we would go into the judgment, which I don't know how long that would take, because we would at that point have a mind like Christ, which would mean we have a mind like God. So these judgments might take place simultaneously in a few minutes. I don't know. Anyway, maybe not, but that will pass away, and we'll be judging those that tormented us. They don't believe that, but they will after it happens. And then we're finished with that. The cycle with the salvation and all that stuff is finished. Now we're up in heaven. And we've got that kind of body. There's no more death or getting sick or injured or anything like that. There's no more wars. There's no more thievery. I mean, you don't have to lock your door. Nobody's robbing anything from anybody, and nobody's fighting with each other. It's all none of that. And you're in perfect bliss and harmony, and the bad ones are separated far away from us, so we don't have any of that. And you go off into another age, you might say, or whatever, which could be an eternal age. And what happens after that, I don't know. I don't have any idea. Do we all become like God or Christ and have our own universe and creation and build billions and billions more? I have no basis to say that. I've heard people say it. But I have no reason to say it's true. Why would I say it's true? I have no reason. I've heard it said, but no basis for it. Could be, but I don't know anything about that. It's just a guess, and it's not a good idea to go around just guessing in the dark. So we're not told very much about what happens when we're in heaven. And we're not told very much about what happens when we're in New Jerusalem. And we are told a little bit about what happens when we have everlasting life. You know, particularly read Jeremiah 30:31. You could read Malachi 3 and 4. We'll jump out of the stall. Malachi 4 will jump out of the stall like a baby calf. We'll be young again. But this is the point. Is there's different, what's called cycles. Now, where did I get this cycle thing from? Oh, many years ago, I ran into an Orthodox woman. She got us an apartment, and she wasn't, I don't believe, ultra Orthodox, but she was quite Orthodox. And I wanted to see what she believed was going on with end times, and she said, oh, it's like we're just going to go into another cycle. What they were telling me is, there was problems with Gaza firing missiles, and that her husband said to me, don't you worry about that stuff. Hashem, which is the way they represent God, they won't say his name because the rabbis tell them not to. Because why? Because it says those that call on the name of the Lord in Jerusalem will be saved. So they don't want you to know the name of the Lord. Tells you how good they are, the rabbis. So Hashem means Ha is the Hashem, his name. So it's the name. So he takes care of everything. Don't you worry. He's saying, don't you worry. Stop worrying. Don't worry. That's how they're taught. Don't worry about it. God will take care of it. Is that bad advice? Actually, no. It's not bad advice at all. It's not. And that's one of the reasons I suspect you see the ultra-Orthodox say they don't want to go in the army. They also don't believe this Israel is Israel. It shouldn't be called Israel. They're correct on that. They also know the next temple comes down from heaven. They're correct on that. They're way more correct on things than the church. But they don't know who the Messiah is. I think the leaders of them do, but never tell them, because the leaders are working with the enemy. Let me look at the live stream and see if I got any questions to answer. Dominican Republic, okay, we don't get a lot of people from there. Kings is not literal. Well, it is. The word Moloch means, well, no, that's not kings, but no, kings is literal. It's saying the superpower of the time. What are you, why would you say the kings of the earth is plural? It's those that run the countries. The superpower, you're often left field guy. You got no scripture support. And the word means kings, the leader of a country or a district, a piece of geography, something like that. The word kings does not mean the top superpower of the time. That's not the correct meaning of the word. I don't know where you got that from, but it's certainly not correct. It means kings. Now, you might have found the scripture somewhere where kings is misinterpreted, but you should have told us that scripture if that's what uh, you're going after. Uh, Let me just check something here, see if. Moloch is king, and it's a ruler, like a sovereign guy that, like a state governor or something like that, and it's a king. It's uh, God's referred to as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the kings of the earth. I don't know where you get this from, but you're confused about this. Um, so I don't know where you picked that up, but whoever gave you that, I don't know where it came from, but I never saw anything giving any credit to that. So I hope you got something out of this. Uh, there's been more articles in X, the former Twitter, I guess you could say. People are freaking out all over because they're seeing their lifestyle collapse. You see, the way people are trained by Satan's people in Satan's world is what's most important is, go to school, learn a skill somehow, be a productive worker, and go to work. Okay? And that means make the rich richer. And be a good person, don't break the law, although the laws are so stupid the past 50, 60 years. In America, you can't, and in Europe and other places, how can you not break the law? Everybody's breaking the law. Breathing is probably against the law when you think about it. Okay, so don't break the law. Fall in love with somebody and get married and have children, although that's gone out the window now. Of course, a lot of the marriages now, there's no having children, if you get my drift. And it's just if it feels good, do it. And, it's gone bizarre, But the old days, it was, go to school, get a good job, and, find somebody to marry and have children and grow old, and then what happens? One of you two is going to die before the other, and, there's no talk about salvation, there's no talk about pleasing God. Okay, what does it sound like? Okay, what's some more evidence? I'm not doing this. I'm just telling you what the words are. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, why the heck do you want to take an oath every day in school to pledge allegiance to a stupid flag that happens to have 50 pentagrams on it, which is clearly known to be a demonic symbol? It doesn't say I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, does it? It says I pledge allegiance to the flag. What the heck is that? You see what I'm saying? You're pledging allegiance to a demonic pentagram thing. All these little things they pull on you, They love it so much with their little parlor tricks. That's all they are. They don't have any real power. They're deceivers, that's all. Satan's power comes from people. Got aircraft up today. You probably hear that one. There's no airliners flying around here. The airliners come in over the Mediterranean and they land in Ben Gurion. They don't fly around in Israel, like in America. They don't have that. They're patrolling because they're worried about what happened in Qatar. Yeah. Okay, let's do a little bit of praying and stuff. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, I pray that the people in Israel that think they know the law from the synagogues know the law. And I pray they understand that the Talmud is not the Bible. Okay? And I pray they understand the weightier things of the law. And I pray all this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you all can agree. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I loose out of all the synagogues and Messianic congregation in Israel the false gospels, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, all these bad works and evil things. I loose them out of all the synagogues and the people that attend and teach in these synagogues as well. And I ask this for you to do, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with this. I command you, unclean spirits, to depart from every person that works or attends any synagogue in Israel, any Messianic congregation in Israel, any church in Israel, and any such person that owns, operates, controls, or works for any government, local or national, in Israel. Depart from all these people immediately, you unclean spirits, never return unto them again. And I further command you, unclean spirits, to not go into these people ever again, nor communicate with them, or appear to them, or help them, or assist them, or guide them, lead them, direct them, or lie to them, or deceive them, or reward them, or punish them, or threaten them for 1 year continuously, beginning now. And this is all done B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can join in. Why focus on Israel? Because that's where, as a believer, your future is. Very short term, you'll be here. Again, we need a place to bring people. Now, some people we could help here. They'll learn spiritual warfare, they'll learn binding, they'll learn loosing, they'll learn demon tossing, and they could make it. Probably they've had years and years in the church world. Maybe they left the church world and they've been studying the Bible and they know stuff and they're not new believers and they can. But imagine, they might be able to handle it, but imagine if you're getting some people that never had any familiarity with the New Testament, and then you start bringing them in, and then Satan goes after them because they have the testimony of Yeshua, which is the spirit of prophecy. They know the prophecies, and they obey the commandments. And then Satan comes after them, and they're not yet up to speed on spiritual warfare. What happens to them? Oy, oy, oy. We can protect them to some extent, which we do with our binding and loosing. We could help, but don't you think it would be much better if we were with them in a meeting place, like in Acts 2, where they came into a house and several people that have been walking in the true gospel for a few years were in the house, and they could ask questions and hang out and learn and see how we do things. And, I think that would be better. That's what I think, So I think we'll do that. But then again, when Yeshua appears, it says they shall all know me from the least to the greatest. They're not going to run around saying, know the Lord. And he's going to put the law in their inward parts, in their heart, and give them a heart of flesh. So maybe it's not needed. See my point? It may not be needed. At least I tell you I don't know stuff, I don't run around like a churchianity person who never talks about anything they don't know, and they don't go back and admit mistakes, which I do. So, there you have it, Trump may be out of contact with his unclean spirits because he's doing things that I think when the unclean spirits are not interested in. He's starting with Venezuela. He's helping Israel start up with Qatar now. And I don't know what he's really gung ho for his gambling casino vacation resort place in Gaza. Playground for the rich and famous. I don't think the Satan bots are dumb enough to gamble. I know a lot of the entertainers that would go to Vegas and Lake Tahoe and Reno, they would be given chips by the casino. They'd say, here's 5,000, 10,000, something like that, go play on us, right? And if they won, they could keep the winnings, I think, or maybe keep it all. I don't know. But that's how they did it. Maybe they couldn't keep any of it. I don't know. Maybe that was part of their hiring. I don't know how they did it. They probably let them keep it. I don't know. They probably didn't win. I really don't know. So why would they do that? Because I don't think, they did it with like Sammy Davis and other people because these entertainers are Satan bots, and they know that there's cheating going on in the casino, and they're not going to take their money like a jerk and go there and get ripped off. They're not that stupid. So the casinos want them to play, so it creates excitement for other people. Oh, the celebrities gambling. Oh, let me join in, and it just creates, more stimulation for gambling, and that's why they do it. So I guess depending on the celebrity they give. Now, when Elvis came there, I don't think Elvis was able to go to the casino and do that because he would have attracted such a crowd that it would have shut down the casino, the gambling, and I don't think that would have worked. And that might be the same with some really massively popular stars. Maybe Frank Sinatra would be the same thing. Sammy Davis Jr. was very popular, but not like Elvis and Sinatra. So I used to go to Lake Tahoe for business, and I used to enjoy it. I used to go up there. I was something like a salesman, and I would be some parts I would go up there every 2 weeks, but that was rare. Usually, I don't know. I went up. I must have gone on business there 10 times or something, maybe 12. I used to enjoy it. I'd get a decent hotel pretty cheap. By that I meant the company would pay 40, 50, 60, not even 60, 40, $50. Not a little dump motel. It'd be a nice one of the big hotels with the casinos. A nice place, right? A basic room. I wouldn't get a suite or anything. A basic room. It was comfortable. It had the blackout curtains, right? And then I'd eat the buffet, because the buffets back then were like a breakfast buffet could be $2, $3, $4, depending where. And you'd have a ton of things you could eat. The buffets for breakfast back then would be like eggs, cereals, pancakes, some fruits, ham, bacon, rolls, pastries, stuff like rather basic, but good enough for a breakfast. Lunch would be more elaborate. You'd have some fish, like they would put shrimp there and crab. You'd have some meat, like prime rib or ham or both. Hamburgers, maybe hot dogs, vegetables, salads, desserts. It'd be quite elaborate. And then dinner would have, what would dinner be? $6, $8, $9, depending where you were. And they would have, what? They'd have lobster, steaks, maybe fillet, fish fillet, and vegetables, salads, desserts. It would be quite a spread. Now they're $100 for a really elaborate buffet for dinner, but they got more conservative ones in, Vegas. You could still get a $25 buffet, I guess. It wouldn't be that good. Probably $40, $50 would be the mid-range, which would be very good food. Very good. So I used to go there, and I would go see the shows. Because to see the shows, you had to buy 2 drinks. And drinks were cheap. What were they? $2, $2.50 or something like that. And you had to pay for them at the beginning of the show, and they'd bring you both. And the shows weren't that long. They were under an hour, which was, the first few times it was a surprise. I mean, you'd expect an hour and a half, but they want people gambling, and they want people drinking. So they make you buy 2 drinks, which most people are going to drink, and then you got a 45 minutes, and they're hoping you go gamble after that, which I wouldn't do. And so I saw Sammy Davis. He was quite an entertainer. I saw quite a few entertainers over there. I can't remember everyone. Never saw Elvis, but they were pretty good. And that's all you had to do to go generally. Now, they had some places where they had a big showroom and you had to buy a ticket to go in. I generally didn't do that. Those shows, I think, would have been more like an hour, not 45 minutes. And while they get the people to gather to wait online to get in to see the show, the real serious show, they have the people wait online right by the slot machines. I hope they play the slot machines on. Well, they go. The whole thing is designed for you to gamble, because the more you gamble, the more they make. And that's what they want. And they got to put up with people that go there and don't gamble. So over the years, back in the 70s, they were giving everything away because the amount of people that went up there and didn't gamble was very small. Maybe 10% of the people, 5%, very small. So they weren't worried about it, and that's why they were giving the buffets away, and the hotels were so cheap. I used to go to Reno, and some of the nicer. It was a nice hotel I found. I think it was about $29 or $34 or something like that. It was a really nice place. It was about 6 stories high. The rooms were really nice. They had a small casino downstairs. It was a nice place. A good buffet. Really cheap. So I used to go to Reno and Lake Tahoe. I never went out to Las Vegas. The people that covered Las Vegas would go out of the Los Angeles district, or I was up in the San Francisco district. So they would go to Vegas, but yeah, Reno. I never thought much of it as a town. I never liked it. Um, I didn't care for it. Tahoe was beautiful, winter and summer, but there wasn't much to do. Well, there was, I guess. Um, you had a line, you had a state line, and on one side of the line you had California, and the other side you had Nevada, and the casinos were right on the side of Nevada. But to go from California to Nevada took 5 seconds or less, So they had skiing on the California side. I think it was I think it was California side. They had the skiing up there, which was great skiing. It went up about 10,000 feet. They had ski lifts, and I used to go skiing there. It was nice skiing, really nice. And they had places where you could rent a hot tub that was made out of wood, and it would be in a private area, a little area, but it would be outside. You could see the stars. And after skiing, you could rent the jacuzzi and go in there and sit in the jacuzzi, and you'd be out there looking at the stars. And even if it was snowing, you could still sit out there because the jacuzzi was hot. Didn't. Then there was other places where the jacuzzi was more of a public collective jacuzzi. And that was a problem because the place we used to go to was about 35, 40 feet to get inside to the heated lockers. So when you went to go to the jacuzzi, you usually would get a bathrobe, and if you had one, which I didn't have, and then you go to the jacuzzi and you're freezing by the time you get there because it's like 20 degrees out at night. And then you jump in the jacuzzi and you warm up. And then when you get out of the jacuzzi, you literally got to run to get back inside and warm up. That wasn't too much fun. But anyway, so what else? So I'll do some more. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, my Heavenly Father, I pray for all the true believers in this group that come and listen to the videos and the live streams. I pray that their needs be met. I pray that they can meet together with other believers soon. I pray for their strength, stamina, and endurance, and your healing and recuperative power would flow through them, and they would be healthy, happy, and whole, and their animals and pets would be safe, secure, and healthy, happy, and whole. And I pray that your peace would be on us, the gifts of the Spirit would be on us. We would have joy, calm, rest, and rest in you, knowing you're going to deliver us from all the evil to come on the earth, all the bad stuff, and it's not going to affect us. Like it says, hide in your place, it'll pass soon. That you give us this ability, all of us, some of us don't have it, to be, I think some of us don't have that much of it, where we could all be at rest and know your will is best and the things you do are best, and we could just trust you and relax in what you're doing and not get stressed out by what we're about to see and hear in the short-term future. And we would just stay happy and rejoicing in you. And I pray you help us with our problems and take them away. All our problems with money, with governments, with credit bureaus, with corporations, with landlords, with employers, with co-workers, with neighbors, with anything, family, friends. Take these problems away from us, Father God Jehovah, so we could just stay more in peace. And I ask this, all of you, my Heavenly Father, for myself, my wife, and all the true believers that come and watch and listen to the live streams and the videos, and their households that live with them. And I submit this to you as a prayer, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with this. So that's what I got for today. I hope you enjoyed this. It's part of my endeavor to help you and comfort you. And I don't know how well I'm doing, but I'm trying. I don't think I'm doing too bad. And I'm trying, and I hope it's working. I pray it's working. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. So that's what I got for today, and I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. Thank you for the offerings. Things are getting better. Got a little bit yet to go with the offerings, but it's not very bad anymore, but still got a little ways to go. And I can answer questions if you want to email me or anything like that. And just let me know. And I'm out. Thanks, guys.